Hello and welcome back to General Teaching Strategies. This is video part 5. We're going to begin with objective 12. Identify the relationship between prompts and antecedent stimuli. And then you'll be able to classify and discriminate between types of prompts, select appropriate uses of reinforcement during DTT, determine when and how often to collect data during discrete trial training, and then identify some myths about DTT that led to second-generation instructional formats for children with autism. So number 3 is prompting or waiting. So number 1 was the orienting response. Number 2 was the antecedent stimulus presentation to start the trial. Number 3 is prompting or waiting. Now a prompt is a supplementary stimulus paired with the target antecedent stimulus. The prompt evokes the target response in the presence of the target antecedent stimulus. So if you like, you can also think of a prompt as some form of assistance or guidance or help. But this definition is more precise. So examples of prompts are or a way of thinking about prompts are that they are instructions, gestures, demonstrations, meaning modeling, touches or other things like touch on the elbow, touch on the wrist, that we arrange to do to increase the likelihood that children will make correct responses. So what might prompts look like? Well, for wiping one's shoes before coming into the house from a rainstorm, the doormat is the SD that evokes wiping shoes on the floor. If the doormat itself does not evoke wiping shoes on the floor, you could deliver a verbal prompt that says, "Oh, wipe your shoes, please." All right, so that's a supplemental antecedent stimulus that could evoke wiping shoes on the floor mat or the doormat. For using the restroom, the picture on the door that signals men, women, handicapped, or other functions as SDs, which evoke entering the correct restroom. But if they don't function as SDs, and you're teaching someone about this, then a prompt could be that the learner starts to walk. Let's say a boy who starts to walk towards the women's restroom. You say, "Oh, not that one," and then that evokes the boy walking over to the men's restroom door instead. Well, that would be a verbal prompt there. Alternatively, let's say I'm with my son, and he doesn't have enough experience where either picture on the door would evoke him walking into a particular restroom, let's say because he's just a little kid, and so he follows dad's model. So in other words, let's say we're in a coffee shop or something, and I walk into the room that has the men's restroom sign on it, and then he follows me. Okay, so it's not the men's restroom sign that's evoking that response, it's me. I'm modeling it, and then he's just imitating my model, so my model is a prompt. One student's lunchbox is an SD for opening the box and obtaining her lunch, but an S delta for other students. Well, if that wasn't the case for a given learner, and a student started to open another student's lunchbox, and you pointed to their lunchbox, and that point evokes opening their own lunchbox instead of the other students, well, that would be a gesture prompt. In the presence of let's skip this one because I'm going to give you a more concrete one. So at the dinner table, the presence of your plate on food is an SD, which evokes eating from your plate, and the other's plates of food are S deltas that abate eating. Now, for a learner for whom their plate is not an SD, what you could do is you could move their plate a little bit and they start eating from it. Or you could push their plate closer, or you could point to it, or you could say, "That's your plate." Or you could say, "Eat this." Right? And so those antecedent stimuli may evoke the child eating from the correct plate. All right, so that's, I think, sufficient there. Just to give you, we're gonna go through more examples, but just wanted to provide a few at the moment. Now, if the response is not in the learner's repertoire, so they have a skill deficit, prompts must be used to evoke the target response in the presence of the antecedent stimulus. There are other situations where you may not need a prompt. That is, the response is in the learner's repertoire, and it's somewhat evoked in the presence of the antecedent stimulus, and so you only need differential reinforcement. Other situations you may need to prompt. Prompts should only be used temporarily. The purpose of prompting is to bring the target response under the discriminative's control of the target antecedent stimulus that would control the response in the natural environment. When you don't deliver a prompt, we call that waiting. So sometimes you just present an antecedent and you wait for the target response to occur. Two general types of prompts are response prompts and stimulus prompts. In this, what I'm giving you now is, again, just a general overview, and this is something that would be discussed more in depth in a course that's focused on instruction for students with autism. A response prompt operates on the response directly. A stimulus prompt operates on the stimulus directly. So those are just for you to memorize. I just want you to be familiar with these ideas. I'm not going to give too many examples of it. Here are types of prompts in fading procedures. So what I want to emphasize is there's a difference between a prompt and a prompt fading procedure. The prompt fading procedure is what you use to gradually eliminate the prompt so that it's no longer needed for the learner to engage in the target response. So differences between stimulus and response prompts. The effect of a stimulus prompt is it changes what the learner responds to. The effect of a response prompt is it changes the dimension of the learner's response. In other words, let's say, makes the response more likely. Types of stimulus prompts are positional, movement, redundant, gesture. Types of response prompts are physical, model, gesture, verbal. And types of fading procedures for stimulus prompts are gradual systematic reduction in the presence or the conspicuousness or noticeability of the prompt, and stimulus shape transformation. Response prompts, fading procedures are most to least, least to most, time delay, and graduated guidance. Now, prompts must be effective every time and individualized based on learner characteristics. For example, if touching the learner evokes problem behavior, you may use gestures instead of hand over hand or physical prompts. Prompts are systematically faded, reduced, and eliminated across trials using prompt fading procedures as the target antecedent stimulus becomes an SD. Prompt intrusiveness can be classified as full or partial. So, for example, a prompt can be a full physical prompt, a partial physical prompt, a full gesture, partial gesture, full model, partial model, etc. Now let's look at number 4, the student's response. The student's response should be operationally defined to enable reliable and accurate data collection and ensure treatment integrity. If the target response to be reinforced is unclear, then you may accidentally reinforce an incorrect response, so that's make an error of commission. Or you may fail to reinforce a correct response, that would be an error of omission. Those should be terms familiar with from SP 3633. If the target response is unclear, then you may collect data on the wrong responses or fail to collect data on the correct responses. So these would be problems with treatment integrity. These would be problems with data collection. If more than one person is responsible for collecting data or implementing the treatment or intervention or teaching practice, then unclear response definitions can lead to inconsistencies between instructors. For example, the target behavior is, let's say the target behavior is matching identical items in an array on the tabletop. Well, you have to be precise about what the learner needs to do during discrete trial when they're learning to match identical items. Do they need to point to the item? Do they need to just touch it? Do they need to pick up the item? Do they need to point to both the sample and the match? Do they place the sample on the match? You have to be specific about the student's response to enable reliable and accurate data collection and treatment integrity. So as we're talking about the student's response, we're talking about this part in the 4-term contingency. We're talking about this part of our discriminated or restricted operant diagram. ASR 17. When the student forgets to throw their trash away before leaving the activity table, I say, remember to throw your trash away, which evokes the behavior. What is the prompt? Is it A, the activity table, B, the presence of the trash, or C, I say, remember to throw your trash away? A couple more seconds. Okay, I'll close the poll. The answer is C. It's I say, remember to throw your trash away. The naturally occurring SD is whatever signals that the activity at the table is finished. ASR 18. What type of prompt did I use? Was it a verbal prompt, A? Or B, a gesture prompt, C, model, or D, movement? A couple more seconds. Try to close the poll. In this case, it was a verbal prompt. I didn't point to the trash being thrown to throw it away. I didn't model it. I didn't move anything. I just said, hey, remember to throw your trash away. ASR 19. If instead another kid throws his trash away, the sight of which evokes another kid throwing his trash away, what kind of prompt is the first kid throwing his trash away? Okay, so I think I worded this poorly, so let me try to do some clarification. We have two kids, and kid 1 and kid 2. So kid 1 throws his trash away, and that evokes kid 2 throwing his trash away. So kid 1 throwing his trash away is what kind of prompt for kid 2? Is it A, verbal, B, gesture, C, model, or D, movement? A couple more seconds. Okay, I'll close the poll. The answer here is C, model. The first kid modeling throwing trash away, and that evoked an imitative response. That is, the second kid throwing his trash away. Nobody told the second kid to throw his trash away. Nobody used a gesture like pointed where to put it. And nobody moved his trash. Okay. It's one kid modeled the behavior and then evoked him doing the same thing. ASR 20. What is the relationship between the prompt and the target antecedent stimulus? Is it A, the evocative effect of the antecedent transfers to the prompt? Oh, let me get some more context. As a result of differential reinforcement, what is the relationship between the prompt and the target antecedent stimulus? Is it A, the evocative effect of the antecedent transfers to the prompt? The evocative effect of the prompt transfers to the target antecedent? C, the consequence alters the function of the prompt? Or D, the prompt alters the function of the target response? A couple more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll. And the answer here is B. As a result of differential reinforcement, prompting, and prompt fading, in the presence of the target antecedent stimulus, differential reinforcement has a function-altering effect, and that is the target antecedent becomes an SD. What is the SD? Well, it evokes a target response. That's a new function of that antecedent. Where'd that function come from? Well, it came from the prompt. Initially, the prompt evokes the target response, but differential reinforcement transfers the evocative effect of the prompt to the target antecedent. Alright, that wraps up this video part. I'll see you in the next video part. We'll talk about the consequence.